CeraVe, Olay, something with a wall of blue and white packaging, and some very quiet, very persistent voice in the back of your head tells you it cannot possibly work as well as the cream sitting on your bathroom counter in the heavy glass jar. The one with the gold foil. The one that cost you $300 and made you feel, for a second, like you'd bought your way into better skin. I need you to sit with something before we go any further. I have spent my career on the inside of this industry, in labs, in ingredient meetings, in rooms where people decide what a jar should cost before they've decided what should go in it. And I'm going to tell you right now, the brand sitting at the very top of today's list shares a parent company with one of the most expensive face creams sold anywhere in the world. Not a knockoff, not a dupe, the actual same corporate family. And once you hear which one, you're going to look at your bathroom shelf completely differently. So here is the one thing I want you to carry through everything I'm about to tell you. You are almost never paying for the formula. You are paying for the address, the marketing, the department store counter, the woman in the white coat who consults with you for 20 minutes. That's a real cost, and someone has to cover it. It just isn't your skin covering it. Your skin doesn't know the difference between a jar that cost $4 to make and one that cost $40. It only knows ceramides, humectants, and whether the barrier is intact. I say this as someone raised in a Korean beauty culture that has always treated the ingredient list, not the packaging, as the actual product. Korea has required full, mandatory ingredient disclosure on labels since 2008, years before most Western markets caught up, precisely because the philosophy over there has never been trust the brand. It's read the list. So that's what we're going to do today, together, item by item, walking the Walmart aisle the way I'd walk it myself. At number 8, and I want to open with this one because it seems almost too humble to belong here, Burt's Bees. Here's why a beeswax and honey brand that started at a farmer's market in Maine earns a spot on a list about beating $300 creams. Burt's Bees has been owned by Clorox, yes, the company that makes bleach, since 2007. That ownership shift funded real reformulation work, and their newer renewal line leans on bakuchiol, a plant-derived ingredient increasingly used as a gentler alternative for people who can't tolerate retinol. It won't outperform a true prescription retinoid, but for the price, it's an honest, simply built moisturizer, and Clorox's manufacturing scale means the quality control is tight. Not glamorous, reliable, that's the whole pitch. At number 7, Vaseline. I know, stay with me. 100% petroleum jelly moisturizer sitting on the bottom shelf is doing something that most $300 creams are quietly trying to imitate, with far more complicated and far more expensive occlusive blends. Vaseline seals moisture in almost completely dermatology research has shown petroleum jellies remarkably effective at reducing water loss through the skin. Owned by Unilever, a company that also owns much pricier skincare lines, Vaseline hasn't needed a reformulation in generations because the chemistry already works. The layering technique many people now know as slugging, sealing your other products under a thin layer of an occlusive at night, is a practice with real roots in Korean routines, long before it had an English name and a hashtag. It's not sophisticated. It's just correct. Number 6. Aveeno. Owned by Kenvue, which spun off from Johnson & Johnson in 2023. The reason this earns a slot isn't marketing, it's regulatory. Colloidal oatmeal, Aveeno's signature ingredient, is actually recognized by the FDA as a skin protectant, one of a very short list of ingredients with that specific monograph status. That's not a claim Aveeno invented for a commercial, that's a government classification. For anyone dealing with a compromised barrier, redness, or reactive skin, and after 45, a lot of us are, that's worth more than a fragrance note dressed up as active botanical technology. Number 5. Neutrogena Hydro Boost, also under the Kenvue umbrella now. This is the one I hand to friends who miss the feel of a fancy moisturizer, but don't want the fancy price. It's built around hyaluronic acid in a gel cream base, and dermatologists recommend it constantly, not because Neutrogena pays them to, but because the formula does what a hydrator is actually supposed to do: pull water into the surface layers of skin and hold it there. Here's the honest limitation, because I promised you I'd give you those. If you have very dry, mature skin, the gel texture alone may not be rich enough in the depths of winter. Pair it with an occlusive on top. Remember Vaseline, sitting 3 slots behind it, and you've essentially built a 2-step version of a much pricier cream for under $25 total. Number 4. Olay Regenerist. Procter & Gamble owns Olay, and P&G is one of the very few drugstore tier companies that runs its own substantial in-house clinical research on skin aging, not just marketing copy, actual published studies on niacinamide and peptide formulations. Niacinamide has solid evidence behind it for improving barrier function and evening tone. Peptides have more mixed but genuinely promising research for supporting collagen signaling. Olay has been quietly running this playbook for years while wearing an unglamorous drugstore label. If you strip away the pink script logo, what's underneath is closer to a legitimate anti-aging formula than most people assume. Now we start to climb into Korean territory directly, because the next 2 items are where the ownership story gets genuinely interesting, and where I want to be honest that Korean beauty is not immune to the very dynamics we've been talking about. Number 3. Beauty of Joseon. This brand went from a small independent label to an internet phenomenon almost overnight, largely on the strength of its Dynasty Cream and its Relief Sun, a rice and ginseng-based line rooted in traditional Korean formulation ideas, sold at a fraction of prestige pricing. As far as public information shows, it remains independently run rather than folded into one of the giant Korean beauty conglomerates. That independence is part of why it still feels handmade in a category dominated by corporate labels. Though I'll say plainly, independent doesn't automatically mean better. It means the pricing hasn't yet been shaped by conglomerate overhead. For now, at least, you're paying close to what the formula actually costs to make. Number 2. And this is where the story gets sharper. COSRX. If you've spent any time in Korean skincare, you know the name. The Advanced Snail 96 Mucin Power Essence turns snail secretion filtrate into a global phenomenon almost by itself. Here's the reveal. In 2024, Amora Pacific, one of Korea's largest beauty conglomerates, the same corporate family behind luxury lines like Sulhwasu, which retails well into $300 territory, moved to acquire a majority stake in COSRX. So the scrappy Korean skincare brand so many of us fell in love with is, as of that acquisition, sitting inside the same corporate house as a genuinely luxury label. I want to be very clear about something here, because it matters. That doesn't make CO's or RX's formulas worse. The chemistry in that essence hasn't changed, but it should put to rest any idea that Korean automatically means small, independent, or immune to the same consolidation games Western beauty plays. Same industry, same instincts, different accent. Which brings us, finally, to number 1. CeraVe. I promised you at the start that this pick shares a parent company with one of the most expensive creams in the world, and here it is. CeraVe has been owned by L'Oréal since 2017. L'Oréal is the same corporate group behind Lancôme, whose Absolu line of creams regularly retails well past $300, and behind Helena Rubinstein, whose prestige creams go even higher than that. Since the acquisition, CeraVe's formulas have benefited from L'Oréal's much larger dermatological research pipeline and its signature multivesicular emulsion technology, a patented, slow-release delivery system for ceramides and hyaluronic acid, is a genuinely sophisticated piece of formulation chemistry sitting inside an $18 tub. Let that sink in. The company with the resources to build a $300 jar looked at its own drugstore acquisition and decided the smarter long-term play was keeping the price low and the shelf presence everywhere. Because volume, not luxury margin, is where the real money lives. Your skin has never once read a price tag. It has only ever read ceramidase, humectants, and whether the barrier is intact. So how do you actually use any of this the next time you're standing in that aisle? First, stop reading the front of the jar and start reading the back. Look for ceramidase, niacinamide, hyaluronic acid, peptides, and colloidal oatmeal by name. Those are the workhorses, regardless of what the label calls them, in bigger, prettier font. Second, build in layers, thinnest to thickest, the way Korean routines have always structured a regimen. A hydrating essence or serum first, a proper moisturizer over it, and if your skin runs dry, an occlusive like Vaseline sealing it all in at night. Third, don't assume a low price means a weak formula, and don't assume a high price means real innovation. Assume nothing and check the ownership and the ingredient list instead, because as we just walked through, the exact same parent company can be selling you the identical science at two wildly different price points depending on which shelf it's sitting on. Fourth, patch test anything new on the inside of your arm for a few days before it goes anywhere near your face, especially actives like niacinamide, peptides, or bacaccio, because gentle drugstore formula doesn't mean impossible to react to. A few honest notes before we wrap up, because I'd rather you hear these from me than get surprised later. Walmart's inventory rotates by region and by season, so a specific item I've named might be easier to find online than in your local store, and prices shift. Treat this list as a map of what to look for: the brands, the ingredients, the ownership patterns, not a guaranteed shelf you'll find waiting for you tomorrow. And please, nothing here is an argument against sunscreen. If your $300 routine includes a proper SPF, keep using it every single day. Nothing on this list, no matter how good the formula, replaces that. This entire video is about moisturizers and treatment creams, full stop. Here's the bigger thing I want you to leave with. Every brand on this list, Western or Korean, indie or acquired, eventually runs into the same question. Does the company selling it want you to believe in the packaging, or does it want the chemistry to actually do the work? What today's list reveals isn't that giant corporations are secretly evil, or that being owned by Clorox or L'Oréal or Amora Pacific is some kind of scandal. It's that ownership was never the danger. Neglect is the danger. A company coasting on a beautiful jar and a familiar name, while the formula inside quietly stays mediocre. The companies on this list, whatever you think of their size or their bleach and detergent side businesses, are mostly not doing that. They're putting real formulation science into unglamorous packaging because they know something the department store counter doesn't want you to think too hard about. Your skin cannot read a price tag. It never could. Tell me in the comments which of these you've already been quietly buying and which $300 cream you're finally ready to let go of. And if this is the kind of thing you want more of, the real formulas, the real ownership charts, the honest version of this industry. Stay close, because next time I'm going to open up what's actually happening inside Korean sunscreen formulation and why the SPF numbers on the bottle might be telling you less than you think.